My name is Mozam, and I'm here with...
Sarb Kaur.
Could you just spell that for the record, please?
My first name is spelled SarbJeet. Middle name is Kaur, Kaur, and surname is Johal, Johal.
And we are here at your house, your home.
Yes.
And today's date is...
It's the 10th of December 2017.
And the time now is exactly 5 o'clock. And this is an oral history interview about Southall's South Asian film history. Okay. I'd like to start by asking you to tell me a bit about your background and what it was like growing up and where you were born.
Okay. My parents came to England in the late 1960s. When they arrived in this country, they initially stayed with family up in the north. By the time they got married, they then came down to Southall, which was in the early 1970s, and I was born in 1973. So I was born in the Southall area, in Perivale. There used to be another hospital here, which was in Perivale, and that was where the main maternity hospital was. So that's where I was born, and my siblings were born there as well. So I've pretty much been born and bred in Southall. So as a child, I grew up in the 70s, and I remember going to nursery school and my primary school. I do remember when I used to go, like my mum used to take me to nursery or to the primary school, and predominantly my classmates and my friends were mostly white, and most of the community that was around us at the time was white British people. However, there was like a strong Asian feel amongst where we were living, and it was a good community kind of spirit. Everybody used to like help each other. They all knew each other. If you had just like arrived from India or anything like that, and people would go out their way to help you. During that time, back in the school days, we used to have like nice like 6-week summer holidays. I can remember like playing around with my siblings. There was Southall Park there as well, a nice big park, which everyone used to go to as well. Back in those days, everyone felt pretty safe, so that all the doors were usually open and everyone coming in each other's houses. So we used to like play around on the roads in our garden with our neighbours and friends and things. So it was, pretty nice growing up around the area. I can remember when we used to go out shopping and everything, it all used to be, not big supermarkets and things like that weren't around at that time. So every Saturday was like exciting because you'd get up and you'd go to Southall Market. So there was a market there. So you'd go in there and like there's lots of different stalls selling things like food, like clothing, bric-a-brac and everything. There used to be one big main supermarket there, Safeways. So since then it's sort of like changed, kind of like companies and brands and things. But the good thing about Southall Broadway, it was like always vibrant and colourful. I can remember like all the different smells that were coming from there. There was a lot of like fruit and veg shops, a lot of like Asian clothing wear and things like that. We used to, my mum's like a great cook, so we didn't really used to like eat out a lot. There wasn't that many restaurants around there. There was quite a few, like mostly takeaways and stuff like that. Also like entertainment wise, I could like remember that there was a couple of cinemas at the time I was growing up, sort of like in the like 70s up until like the early 80s. So there was one in what we say is Old Southall, which was like the Dominion Cinema. So that's now closed down and changed to Dominion Centre. And then there was also a big cinema on South Road, which was called the Liberty Cinema. Liberty, and now it's like a Liberty Market, but it was like the Liberty Cinema at that time. And that cinema used to show predominantly like Asian films, and these Asian films was like Bollywood stuff, which was very exciting to everyone because like around that time, if you wanted to go to the cinema, you'd only be able to watch English films, and most of like the people that had like emigrated to the country still didn't speak English. I think when the Bollywood cinema came to like Southall, I think for the community it gave a sense of like being back home, and could also like bring like a bit of culture and things like that to them while they were here. And it was such a big deal, because I can remember going to, like, I was small and used to go with like my mum, dad, and also at the time we was like living with extended family, so all the cousins, uncles, aunt would all go in a big group like together. It's like very exciting, and there was like everybody else there as well. It's like always packed out, and they were showing films. So I remember going there, so I saw like Kabhi Kabhi there, Anthony Akbar Anthony, I remembered going there as well. A few others can remember vividly as well. They were still showing films like even later on that had already been shown in India, so it was still, even though there was films that had been already come out over in India, still they were playing them down here. We'd see them a little bit later, but they would like be on show for ages, like months and months and months. It wasn't like down here, be on for a couple of weeks or a couple of months. They'd be on for absolute ages. So that was really nice. For us, it was like, wow, because at that time we were born and bred in England, so we didn't know that anything about India, only from the stories that we heard from our parents, our grandparents, our aunts, uncles, and things like that. So in going to the cinema and seeing that, you saw a different side. You also like heard the language and things being spoken. So it was quite exciting, and saw a different like side of like how we lived and how people lived over there. So if you wanted to see Asian films, that was the only way at that time that you could go and see them. Then sort of like round about the early 80s time, what happened was all of a sudden the video recorder came out, and what started to happen is that suddenly there was like an influx of like Hindi movies, suddenly Panjabi, because at the cinema there wasn't a lot of like Panjabi films, but they started come because they were put on the video format. So in a way, just like they said that video killed the radio star, it's like video killed the Indian cinema down here around about that time. So it was like exciting, because all of a sudden on Southall Broadway everywhere popped up a video store, also started to sell like things like cassettes and records and things like that. So not just it was changing in terms of the film scene, it was also changing in terms of the music scene as well. So you can remember going to like, go to the video shop. It's like dirt cheap to go and hire videos, and bring them home. And what used to be happening is like you'd bring one and everyone get excited and sit around, and something that whole family could like watch. So you could all watch different kind of like films and things at the same time. Like it's not just like movies and that, but we can remember we used to go to like people's weddings, and at the weddings you used to get all these live like bands, which were back out in those days had started. So there was like at that time, before like sort of like raves and gigs, really, it was like the wedding where you'd hear bands like Alab, Brahmi, Apna Sangeet, Malkeet Singh and everything. And that was also exciting because it all got recorded. And again, not everybody had a video player and that lot, so sometimes you'd go around to this person's house and see it, or you get the other family coming, or you bring it around so you can watch. That was another exciting thing, is like everybody wanted to see the video, see themselves on TV and everything like that. So I do remember, in terms of the, going out as a child, seeing films on the big screen in the cinema, but at the same time, I remember a lot of the stuff that I did see in terms of like Bollywood and Punjabi was mostly on video, and then after that in the 90s started the CDs. So it all evolved from there, really.
So what was your earliest memory of Southall?
I'd say really of like going out onto like walking around in the streets, walking through Southall, seeing like all different grown up people all dressed in more Asian kind of clothes and that, also seeing like white British people as well. The fashion at that time, that was like all like strange, you know, seeing people wearing English and then people wearing Asian clothes. And like I said, the smells that were around because of the food and everything like that. So those my sort of like earliest like real memories of like Southall.
Did you feel you belonged in Southall when you were growing up? Did you feel a part of the community?
Actually, yes, I. With me, the thing is like, although I was born in, my parents are both from Punjab, so predominantly in the house was actually spoken Panjabi. But for some reason, me and my siblings, from like an early age and that lot, did pick up like parts of Punjabi, but mostly actually spoke English. So in terms of like feeling and belonging in the community, to a certain extent I could like identify with like the food, the music, the language to a certain extent, but sometimes I did feel a bit like alienated because I couldn't speak the fluent Punjabi that other people could like speak, which is still to this day. So I still have sometimes a communication problem with like people who they don't speak English, and my Punjabi is not exactly great and everything. So at that time, trying to communicate with the older generation used to be a bit of a problem. But other than that, I still do think I've got a sense of belonging. You know, this is my, you know, town. I grew up here and everything, so I'll always be, you know, like part of Southall. I can't really think of going anywhere else, which is going to be exactly the same. This is just a totally different experience where a lot of other people, sometimes who come even from like India or like from other parts of the country, they also say it's like a unique experience. There is a sense of belonging. The community spirit maybe is not as strong now as it was back in that day. There was more sense of community. There's more sense of like people wanting to help each other without any gain and that lot. And slowly, unfortunately, it's sort of like eroded away. Like I said, it's like I think people are trying to build it back together, but I don't think it is as strong as what it was before when I was growing up. You could certainly feel it. There was a presence, and people did want to go out of their way to help other people.
Okay. Just going back to one of your points about the languages and stuff, can you remember how people spoke back then? What slang words or sayings were used?
There was a lot of "in it" being used around in it, that thing. And then, like, you know, the street language was like wicked and stuff. I think that sort of like went more in the 80s. More everybody was using more sort of like slang words because, again, like even on mainstream TV, there was a lot of like music video. The culture was coming out, hip hop and things like that. But to be honest, I didn't really sort of like, I knew the slang words, but I can't really remember them now.
That's okay. So, did you ever visit a cinema in Southall?
Yeah.
Pubs, maybe? Or?
Cinema, yes, definitely. Like I said, definitely the Liberty cinema on South Road. That was like the main cinema that I visited. I might have gone to the Dominion cinema as well, but I might have been a bit younger because, like I said, there was like 2 or 3 cinemas in Southall. But my main memories of going is to the Liberty cinema.
Can you tell me what you remember about one of your visits to the cinema?
One of the visits I remember to cinema was to go and see the film Amar Akbar Anthony. Had big Bollywood stars in there at the time, and it was like packed. There was like a big queue, and I can remember like queuing up, waiting, getting excited, thinking I want to get in. I just want to get in. You know, once you got into the cinema, everyone's sitting down, like still chattering and everything. But as soon as the film went on, everyone's just silent and in awe. The songs are coming. I can still remember like sitting in this, they had like red kind of like seating there as well. And as a little kid, like sitting in the seat, but the seat felt like massive and just about trying to see the film and everything. The smell, there was popcorn and things like that. So it's like, it was very nice. And it was, like I said, it was packed. And it's like even had like people, like the little kids sitting on each other, with like 3 people sitting in one seat and things like that. But yeah, that's the kind of like one of the vivid kind of memories of like going there, and again being surrounded by my family. So that was nice having them all. So we're all sitting enjoying the whole experience.
Okay. But, what film did you watch?
It was Amar Akbar Anthony.
Okay.
So it was Amitabh Bachchan, Vinod Khanna, and Rishi Kapoor at the time. So yeah, big named actors.
And who did you go with?
I went with my mum, my dad, my uncles at the time are my dad's chachi and stuff. So it was all like extended family. So we all went together. We only lived like at that time where we were living, it was quite close. So it was just, we didn't have to drive or anything like that. It was all just walking distance, about 15-minute walk just down the road. So for us, that was quite local and quite convenient.
Okay. And what was the atmosphere like?
Oh, it was amazing. Like I said, it was just like everybody, just one big family, like just everyone in the same house kind of like thing. Everyone was like happy, upbeat. You didn't get any sense of like, kind of snobbery or like people like everybody, even though there was like at the time there was like Sikh people, Muslim, Hindus, all together, just enjoying. It was like more like family at that time, again, sense of family. It was like more family kind of like thing. It's like you had people going out with their parents, their grandparents, their cousins and things like that. So it wasn't just like everybody would go out together to experience that. So it was like really, it was like a really good atmosphere. It was nice.
Why do you think South Asian films are so popular within the community?
Again, like I said, I think depending on like how old you were, if you was like older, you'd like left your country, you've come to a strange. You have. It's not like you've moved area. You've actually totally moved to a different country that maybe you don't speak the language. It's got its own like rules and stuff. It's predominantly a white country. So I think that the films like are popular with us is because mainly to give that cultural identity, still holding on to your heritage from outside and trying to I think by watching the films you're trying to preserve the language, you may be trying to preserve traditions, maybe trying to show your family that this is like how we've been brought up, this is your culture. Because I think when you're being brought up here, sometimes there is conflict. Is that you can still have your Asian culture, but then also you've got your British culture because you've been brought up here, so you do think that you're British as well. But in terms of the older generation, I think for them they're still holding on to the fact of like the memories of like when they lived there, even though it might have changed dramatically since they've been there. It still provides like memories. It still can give you like that identity, that sense of like belonging, even though you're not in the same country. It gives you memories, or it can invoke memories of like what it's like to be living in India at the time. So I think that's why like Bollywood is like was quite at that time was quite important to people. They did go out of their way to make time to go and see the films. And again, it was like it's quite entertaining as well. Not just that, it's the entertainment factor level and something that people could relate to that they couldn't really maybe relate to what was watching on the cinema or on what was going on TV at the time. So so again, for a lot of people, it was escapism into something that they knew.
Okay. Could you say a little bit about how the films enabled you to connect with your heritage?
I think I did sort of like cover that. That for me it did like I said, although I couldn't really speak the language, it still made me understand it more. And I also then from Hindi movies actually understood Hindi, because at home it was spoken Panjabi, but from the movies it actually helped me understand the Hindi language. So that in that way it helped me with my understanding.
Okay, perfect. Can you tell me about any films you watched on VHS at home?
There was lots. There's I can't even there was so many that I watched. Mamala Garbar Hai, what you call it, Sholay I watched on VHS, Himmat Wala, oh my god, Dilwale Dulhaniya, so many different films like coming from all that many like time. Kabhi Kabhi, even though I watched it on the cinema, I watched it 100 times on like VHS. You know, the first horror film that I saw was Purana Mandil, still haunts me to this day. That was the scariest Indian horror film I ever saw in my life.
What do you remember about that experience?
Watching it on the video.
VHS at home.
I think that, again, it was like, this time it was more intimate because it was like you wasn't sitting there with a whole load of people. So then you could be a bit more vocal, you could make comments, you could like, you know, sometimes like, you know, there's certain songs where you dance around, and the good thing with the video, you can rewind, forward, pause and things like that, and watch the same thing again and again. So that was like, when in that term, it was like when the video came out, it was good for that. Compared to like, you know, in the cinema you have to behave yourself and things like, because you're out in society and whatever. With the video it was like cool, it was like nice to watch at home. It's another thing with the video, it was convenient. You don't have to travel that thing. It was a cinema coming to your house. So in that way it was a different experience. Yeah.
Okay.
I just had an extra question. Could you maybe talk about your experience of going to a VHS store and what that involved, if you remember?
Okay, there was like lots of like video shops. We went on. There was like two main ones that we used to always go to. One was on the Broadway, and another one was on North Road. And the experience was basically is that you'd go there and they'd have stacks and like shelves full of films, like stacks and stacks of like VH all stacked there, and they used to have counters with them, and like the latest films they would have right on the counter for you. So these were the up-to-date latest ones that had just sort of like been released pretty much over in India. So you'd come in there, you know, you'd find out what were the latest ones. So obviously you want to have the latest one. You know, you'd like hire, and then what you do is you'd pay a certain thing. So it was anything from about like, you know, 50p to about £1. So the later ones were a little bit more expensive, and you'd be able to keep like go there, keep them for a couple of days, and then take them back. And then you'd like think, so you know, constantly what you were doing is that you take one, keep it for a couple of days, and you think you're, you know, getting excited, waiting for, you want to go and get the next one. So that's what the experience is like. I'd go usually not by myself. I was like younger, and for us that was exciting as well, like a little trip out. Yeah, oh, we're going to go to the video shop to go and get a video. So it'd be me and my sister, or me and my sisters. We'd go, and then like, you know, we'd say, or like our parents would tell us there's a particular film that they wanted to see. So it's like, go to the shop and get this film. So we'd have to go there and get that film. But then we were thinking, oh, well, this looks exciting. So yeah, so like I said, even going to the video shop was a little bit of a good little, like I said, for us, it's like, oh wow, we're going by ourselves, you know, kind of like thing. But it was only just down, like, you know, 10 minutes down the road or 20 minutes down the road. And most of them outside would have on their windows like all the big posters. So that was also good. It's like the posters would like, you know, even if you didn't know, you'd like look at the poster and think, oh, that person's in it. Oh, that looks good. So you just go and watch the film because of like you've seen the poster as well. So that was another thing I remember. They always used to have filmy posters dotted around as well.
Okay. How has Southall changed, in your opinion?
It's become, over the years, it has become more diverse in terms of the you know, the population-wise, as in when like I said, when I was younger, my first earlier memories was like mostly being like white Asians, etc. So there was, I don't think, because of being so young at that time during the 70s and early 80s, maybe didn't notice the racism as much as maybe as my parents had experienced, because they would be going and, you know, to the shops or like going to work and everything. But I do remember around about the 1970s there was like the Southall riots that happened, which was mostly on the Broadway, and seeing where I live is just off the Broadway. I can remember it was quite a scary time for us. You know, had the skinheads, the National Front was quite rife throughout the whole country. And so there was like you know, that I do remember is like there was racial tensions growing up. Maybe like older people, like my older cousins and that lot, they used to come back and experience it more because they of this when they're going to school, high school and stuff like that. They used to come across like, you know, it was the white people didn't really like Asians having them around, so they used to get called nasty names, sometimes get into fights and things. So the sad thing was with the riots, unfortunately, there was a guy called Blair Peach who died there, which still to this day people don't know what happened to him. So he was an unfortunate casualty of that, although there was a lot of people like injured and things like that. But since then, in terms of, like I said, the diversity of Southall has changed. It's like you had us as coming in as migrants and things. Then sort of like in the early 90s, you started seeing like Somalians, sort of like then Polish moved here, sort of like then quite later on of the Afghanis and stuff. So sort of like the people that you're seeing around the streets have changed. Some of the shops have changed now to reflect that. You know, down Old Southall, you know, certain parts of like Old Southall, you see a lot of like Somali shops. He's got them in Southall and things. You've also got the Polish shops, Eastern Europeans coming in and stuff. So the main thing I've seen in terms of in how Southall has changed is like the people. Also, like I've seen in Southall has changed is like there's no sense of like community anymore. Everyone does their own thing. Back in the days, round about the 1990s, was the first start of like Nagar Kirtans, which was like the procession through Southall and stuff. And at that time, it was a different kind of atmosphere. It was more like a religious ceremony, people coming together and things like that. But now, over the years, it's become sort of like a social gathering. It's not the same thing, you know, businesses are coming out, too busy giving like their food out, like, and things like that. So, you know, the community spirit is not there. People haven't got time for anyone anymore. Everyone's sort of like is too busy in their work and their own things. I think the youth has changed as well. I think they've like starting to, you know, sort of, I don't know. Again, I don't think they know whether or not they are in the Asian community or in the British community, and I don't think the older generation has done enough to include them. So I think maybe they feel a bit alienated. You know, they haven't really we go down the Broadway and what is there apart from all Asian shops? There's like nothing there for them. There's no place for them the younger people to hang out. Southall Park is sort of like pretty much is like at certain times or like whatever. It's like a little bit of a no-go area. Before it was like you know, you could walk out there any time night. You know, a lot of families used to go there, and that you don't see that now. There's a lot of like, you know, rough people, you know, sort of like questionable characters and things like that. You know, walking around. You know, so I think in terms of like the youth, I think the youth has changed more as well. I think they've got a little, like, don't know where they haven't got a sense of that belonging, don't know where they are. Then there's nothing for that the Asian community is really trying to do to include them. So, you know, maybe that's why they're like a bit angry, or like they turn to crime and stuff like that. So I think that is also like sort of changed as well. Because whereas like when I was growing up, like teenagers and stuff, you wouldn't see much of like Asian youth getting into crime, whereas now it's just part and parcel.
Okay. We're coming to the end of the interview. Before you finish, is there anything else you'd like to add that you feel would be relevant?
I think sort of like in your interview question, you covered quite a lot of ground there. So I don't think there's anything else that I need to add about Southall.
Okay. Well, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you for your time and sharing your stories with us. That's the end of the oral history interview, and the time now is 5:36. with the interview. Your name is again?
Sarb Kaur.
Perfect. Here at your lovely home. And yes, now we have to ask you to sign the release forms.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Did you know that Make a Difference Entertainment is a charity? Help us to support underrepresented talent by connecting with us on our social media.